All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's form building webinar. My name is Nick, and I'll be walking us through the builder today. Today's topic will be on the paragraph and signature widgets, and we'll be going through, put together a basic consent form as a demonstration, and we'll also talk about what you can use the paragraph widget for, and also at the end of the webinar, we'll talk a little bit on how to autofill information into that widget as well. But let's go ahead and get started. We will be starting out in the FormDr training packet as always. So we'll go down to the My Forms page and we'll click those three dots on the right side of that packet. Edit Forms. We won't need any of the other three tabs from the previous webinar, so we'll go ahead and delete those out. And we'll add ourselves a new Scratch tab to work off of today. All right, next to build. And we have our Scratch tab with just our patient name widget. And as always, the patient name widget will be required at least once in each packet. So we will leave this on this tab today as we work through this. But we'll go ahead and place a paragraph widget and a signature widget. We'll just talk about these really quickly. First up, we'll talk about the paragraph widget, and the paragraph widget is just a general text editor, so we can click on that orange pencil icon to open it up. And from here, we can enter whatever information we need. We can format this as needed, bold, italicize, whatever the case may be. You can format into lists as well, or upload any images or information that way if you needed to. We also do offer some preset heading styles for section headers or titles of forms, whatever the case may be. For instance, number 2, which is a good title candidate anyway. But all right, let's go ahead and we'll simulate building out a consent form, just a general consent form with a title, a body, and then we'll add that signature field. And I'll go over how I like to set up those signature fields for all the forms that I build, just because it will look nice and collect all of the information that you'll need. But we'll start with that paragraph first. When doing the titles, it will be up to you, obviously, but we can use the heading 2, for instance, for our consent form title, and we'll just make that say consent form title. There we go. And then we can decide, how we want that information to be displayed. We can have it center aligned if we want to. We can then come down a few spaces, go back to left aligned, and we will be back at normal. Normal will be just the general font size. If we do go back up onto this same line as the title, we'll still be on that heading 2, but each time you advance, it will go back to the original setting. And then from here, we can add our sample text, which I will just grab from my second screen. And then we'll just duplicate this just to get some length here. All right, so we have our form here, our first paragraph. Let's actually go back a little bit, add one more, and then maybe we have section header, and we needed to add some lists. We can add a numbered list or a bulleted list, whatever we want to do. And then we can add another couple of paragraphs. One thing to note about the paragraph widget, if you do want or you won't want to add this extra space, it will look like there will be some space in between these two. However, this paragraph widget, this paragraph tool will already add an extra space in between paragraphs. So we can run both of these paragraphs right up onto one another. However, we can go into the style page, or excuse me, the style page won't show this, but on the live form, there will be one extra space, which we can take a look at later as well. So just keep that in mind when building. if you do start adding in those extra spaces into the builder, you might find yourself with a very large paragraph that takes up a bit of space on that page. So you can always just feel comfortable running each paragraph up right next to one another, and that extra space will be included in that final product. But we have our consent form here. We can then go down and talk about our signature. Now, when it comes to the when it comes to the signature widget, you can do this a couple of different ways. Typically, I always recommend requiring the signature widget, just because if, and there are situations where you may not need a required signature and it may be an optional form, but typically for most signature fields, they will be required. So I do always like to recommend to not forget to toggle on that required toggle because, or enable that required toggle for that matter, because it will be turned off by default. You can also choose to include the timestamp if you like. It will include the day, date, year, and time that it was signed. In these cases, if you are doing mostly forms online, you may not need that date field or that date widget included in all of this because of that timestamp will be there. However, if you are printing forms off and having patients fill those forms out in office, then you might want to include a date widget in there as well. You can always leave that timestamp on if you would like to, but if in those cases, whenever a date widget is included, I typically recommend turning off that timestamp, although it can be very helpful if you do need to know roughly the time that it was signed. And if we turn it off, it just won't be included. And then, of course, while we're here, we might as well talk about the other toggles available for the signature widget. You do have the align left, and just another note as well, all added widgets to each form are going to be aligned left by default. If you do want that widget to align right instead, you can always just come in and uncheck that toggle to make that display to the right side instead. You'll also have access to the hide on print and hide from user toggles. And just a note about these, the paragraph widget will have access to these two toggles as well. These will be the only two toggles that you can use with the paragraph widget. But hide on print, anytime this is enabled, this information will not be included when that form is printed out as a blank PDF. So if you are doing forms in Office and you're printing those forms out as a blank PDF to be filled out in Office, then if this was to be checked on, this would not be included in that printout. So typical situations you would find yourself using this would be maybe some kind of staff only information that you only wanted to be displayed on the web version, or something that would only be displayed on the web version. This toggle may not get used too much, however, it can be useful sometimes if you do find yourself using lots of printed forms. And then the hide from user toggle, I do find quite useful in most situations, simply because this is the best option for any staff only information. When this is toggled on, then when you send that packet to that patient, they will not see this information at all. It will still be on that form and on that submission when it comes back to you. However, the patient will not be able to see it. So this is absolutely the best option for any staff only information. If the patient does not need to see it, or if you don't want the patient to see it at all, maybe it's a signature field that needs to be filled out after the fact, a doctor's signature or an attorney's signature, or whatever the case may be. Usually patients are just on autopilot. They'll sign every single signature widget that they see just to get through the form. And then whenever that comes back to you, if that is something that somebody on your staff needed to sign, then that can be very problematic. So I always recommend for those staff only signatures, always to just hide them from the user, because the user won't be able to see them, or the patient won't be able to see them. There's no chance that they'll fill that out accidentally, and it will always be there for you or the staff member that needs to sign it once it comes back to you on the send and receive page. All right, but the paragraph widget, as well as the signature widget, will have access to both of those toggles. So feel free to use those at your leisure. The signature field will also have a conditional aspect to it as well. This will need to be toggled on this because this will be disabled by default. However, we could enable that conditional toggle, and then we could add any other conditional fields in here as well. So maybe this is patient guardian signature. And then, we could have a conditional field that asks for the guardian name, if not the patient. Or maybe we want to determine if that is the patient or guardian, and we could have a multi-stage conditional element here. We could add another single select option and then say, are you the patient or guardian? Guardian? And then we could put our patient name in here. Maybe we don't need that middle name, just the first and last name. One note about the patient name widget, you will need at least the first and last name. The middle name is optional. However, the first and last name will be required for that widget. So just keep that in mind as well. And then for the guardian, we could just go ahead and add a text field so that we don't change up what that submission is going to be logged under. Another note, I guess, while we're here, it's a good time to point this out. The patient name widget should always only be used with the patient or the person whose name you want that submission to be stored under, because that first and last name field, both of those are going to determine the name that submission is logged under. So on that send and receive page, if you send it out to patient B or patient A and patient B fills their name out in this field instead, this will overwrite all of the other patient names because they will always autofill into one another, and then that submission will come back to you under patient B's name instead. So just be very careful about that when building, and only to use that patient name widget for the patient themselves. All other names can just be taken with a general text field, like so. And then we can also add inputs here as well if we wanted to mirror the styling of that patient name widget. We can also update the placeholder information if we would like to. There we go. And now whenever that signature field is signed, which we can go to the style page is always going to be a live preview of the form. So if we have any required fields that we click past, that required tag will pop up. If we have any conditional information, we can test that here as well. So now whenever that signature widget is signed, it will pop up with another question. Are you the patient or the guardian? We can then have them select here. If it's the patient and they've already filled out their name, then it will autofill for you. If it's the guardian, then they can put in their name and it will collect that name instead. And it won't autofill with the patient name because we've used a text widget or text field widget instead. But that patient or the signature field does have conditional functionality. Might not be used all that much, but it can be very helpful in terms of just saving a little space whenever you're building out those forms. An alternative way to build out a section like this, typically I would say, honestly, the most common way to build out a signature field that I would say anyway, let's go ahead and turn that conditional information off. But if we do decide later on that we want to turn that conditional information back on, we have not deleted it and it will remain in there. So just keep that in mind as well. If something's not working out for you, you can always, with the signature field specifically anyway, you can always just turn that conditional information off for now, and then whenever the patient signs it, they will not be presented with that information, but it's still in there if you ever want to go back and reactivate that. All right. But typically the way that I would see most signature field or signature areas, I should say, set up, and pretty much how we recommend our builders to build these out as well, is I would always recommend just placing down a column widget, which we've done here. I've just dragged and dropped a column widget. And then I'm also going to add a group widget to it. Now the group widget is going to allow you to build out things in a vertical style within a column. And this will make more sense as I demonstrate this, but we're going to drop our signature widget in as the top element in that column. And then so this will mean that our group widget will be taking up the second 50% of this area. But then we can go ahead and add in our patient name widget and maybe a date widget too if we don't want to use that, that timestamp. We can turn that off. Ooh, don't want that to be up front. All right, and this will display a roughly around the same size. So I always like to set up signature fields in this manner. Or if you need to collect any other information, maybe this is a Guardian signature and this is the Guardian name instead, and you want to collect that relationship to patient here instead of the date, then we can use the timestamp. But these will take up about the same amount of space. So setting up a signature field like this, I do find to be the most form friendly in terms of exporting, because it will keep everything nice and tight. It will keep everything together, and it will look nice. And in this style here, we don't have that timestamp on. We do have that date widget included. So we will need to collect that date. All date widgets, by the way, will be toggled on to today by default. So if you are collecting a previous date, then you will want to make sure to uncheck that toggle. Otherwise, it will fill with today's date. All right. And I know we're not too short on time, but we are running up towards the end a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and open up that chat just a little early today, just in case we do have any questions that come through. But the chat is open. If you do have any questions, please feel free to get those in, and I'm happy to get those answered before the end of this webinar. In the meantime, we'll talk a little bit about autofilling into a paragraph widget and kind of the situations that you might find yourself in using this, or at least that I've seen in terms of it being used in a form. But typically, you're just going to need to know how the autofill works. And as mentioned earlier, the patient name widgets, they will always autofill into one another. So we can add another patient name widget here. We'll go next to style, and then once we start filling this out, the other ones will fill out as well. And I just bring this up to demonstrate why this happens. You'll notice that whenever we open up the patient name widget to edit, we can change the title, the placeholder information. We cannot change, however, the field name, and the field name shortcode is going to determine what is going to be autofilled. Now, this is always going to be set on the patient name widget, which is why I always harp on only using the patient name widget to collect the name of the patient or the person whose information you want that to be stored under, because these cannot be changed. So the second patient name widget will also be using the first, middle, and last name shortcodes here. If we were to add a text field or any other element from the sidebar, it will generate a randomized shortcode in that field name instead, one that we can update or edit, and that just prevents any unwanted auto-population from happening. Now, we could go ahead and use that first name shortcode here. Maybe we want to just flesh this out a little bit. Maybe first name here too. My goodness. There we go. And if we go next to style, once we start to fill out this patient name, it will fill out as well, because it shares that same shortcode with the other two patient name fields. Again, because those patient name fields cannot be changed. Okay. But that text field can, and if we were to generate any extra inputs here, it will always generate a randomized unused shortcode in this packet. Again, to just prevent any unwanted auto-population from happening. However, if we do want to auto-populate, all we're going to need to do is just copy and paste this field name into any of the other widgets that you can. So it would be like widgets. So another text field widget, we could place another one down, use that same shortcode, and now whenever that field is filled out, that bottom one will be too. So now they will act as one widget, although this one also has two extra fields. So you could also collect extra information while just auto-filling one bit of that field. Now I only go over that just to demonstrate how the auto population works within the form. Is all going to be based around that shortcode, that generated shortcode here. If we wanted to auto-populate this into a a paragraph widget, for instance, what we're going to need to do is just use a set of brackets in the paragraph. So maybe this says something along the lines of I, and then we want to collect that patient name. So what we're going to do is going to set down 2 sets of brackets for first name and last name. Now, again, we're going to use those shortcodes for the first name and the last name. If we want to collect that patient name, if we're collecting a name from another person, we would use the appropriate shortcodes associated with those answer selections instead. However, in this case, we'll go ahead and use the first and last name shortcodes for the patient. So we're going to insert those shortcodes into those brackets that we've placed. So we've got first name, last name, and then the rest of our sentence. Maybe give permission for, and then we can have our second person to receive my medical information or something like that. And we'll just bring this down so we can see this in action here. But we'll make this second one, maybe this is a release form or something, release my medical information to a responsible party. I don't know. And then we could have first name and last name. And what we could do here is we could do the same thing. So we would put 2 sets of brackets down. If we only had 1 set of brackets, we would only be able to pull 1 set of information over, but maybe you collect the full name in that one field or something like that. That would totally be fine. If that works for you, if you would like that information to be separate, then you can absolutely do that instead. But we'll just use full name for the time being just to demonstrate this. Now, one note about this is we could either use this randomized shortcode. We could just copy and paste that right into those brackets into that paragraph field. Or we could change that. It doesn't have to be this randomized shortcode. This is just randomized and generated this way just to make sure that this isn't being used elsewhere in the form. Because if it is being used elsewhere in the form or in the packet, then you'll have either those 2 elements acting as one, or it's going to cause some disconnection if they're 2 different types of elements. So it's just important to make sure not to reuse any of these shortcodes. However, you can change them to be whatever you would like. So maybe this is responsible party name or something like that. And it doesn't have to be long. You could even do our name or something like that. Whatever you can remember, just know that once you've used this one time, if you do use this again, then then all of those elements will be, acting as one, will autofill with one another with the most recently input information. So we'll use that R name and we'll replace that shortcode that we had originally. And now we can go to our style page again, because this is a live preview, and we could say Nick webinar. And then responsible party. Goodness. All right. Let's type them out instead. And we'll go to the, there we go. And then responsible party, we can just do test name. And then so you can build out sentences within the paragraph widget based on the information that the patient has input. You could essentially use this for a staff notes type situation. You can also have other things input into that as well, such as the selection options. Just know with these, the output is going to be the value rather than the answer selection. So in terms of this, how to use this with a paragraph widget, you would be auto-populating the selection of the parent question. So, we could make this a sex question, or let's just make this a minor question. Is the patient a minor? Yes or no. And then we could have, is a minor. And then the false value can be is an adult. So the value is going to be what's output into that paragraph widget, in this case with the selection option questions, and this will ring true for the drop down and the multiple checkboxes and the single checkbox as well. Just know that that value is going to be what's input into the sentence, and then based off of the selection that they've made. So to do that though, we're going to copy and paste this shortcode of the parent question, and we're going to we'll just replace this. So we could say the patient and then we could set our second set of brackets down, and because we're already filling in those, or the rest of that sentence, is a minor, is an adult, we can just use the brackets running right up to one another. So the patient, first name, last name, and then it will say is a minor or is an adult, but we'll need to add the period there, and we can go test that. So the patient, Nick webinar, is a minor, is an adult. So you see that value is what's being output into that shortcode area. So that's just one note to make about the selection options. And again, that will be the same for the drop down or the multi-select or anything like that. You can output things from selections made into a paragraph widget. It will just be that value that's being output instead. All right. All right. And then once we are all finished and you have everything where you would like it to be, you can just go ahead and go to the style page. This will give you an opportunity to change any of the styling. If you do want those selection buttons to be a different color, you can do that as well, or change that background color, change the logo, or upload a logo if you don't have one, all using the elements on the left sidebar here, or the options, excuse me. And then once the styling is set, you can go ahead, go next to publish. This will take you to the publish page. We do have one more step to go before that form is live. This is just going to give you one last opportunity to collect any of the extra information for this packet. We can then go to the back to my account button, and that will take us to the send and receive page. And from here, you'll know that those changes have been saved and published. We can then go to the My Forms page, and we can see that our FormDr training packet, we originally started with 3 forms within it, those 3 tabs. We now have 1 form. We can click on that live link. It will take us to our new consent form that we've made, and we can see all of that as the patient would. All right. Doesn't look like we have any questions today, so that will conclude this webinar on the paragraph widget and the signature tool. Just as a reminder, we do host these form building webinars every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If you would like to keep up with the schedule that we are adhering to with that, you can go to My Account, Support, and then search Guide. This will take you to our product guide. If you go to the FormDr Updates section down here at the bottom right, you can also, or it will then take you to all of our updates. You can see all our previous updates that we've made, but our form building and our onboarding webinar schedules can be found here as well. For the month of March, we are going through all of the widgets in the builder. Today was paragraph elements. On Thursday, we will be going over the rating scale and calculations and how to use those as well. But please feel free to come here and check this out to see if there's anything that you would like to be in attendance for. If there is something you're interested in though, and you aren't going to be able to be in attendance for that, just know that we will be posting those videos as well. So anything that you may miss, don't worry, we will have that posted for you. And then you can click on that link. It will take you right to our YouTube page, and we'll have timestamps of what we're going over for each of those as well. And again, to get there, you're just going to go to My Account, Support, Search Guide. And it will have the onboarding schedule as well. The onboarding webinars will be held every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. That schedule won't change too much, but you can find all of that information on this page. And we also have our February webinars posted as well, so please feel free to go there and check those out. And then also keep an eye out for the April schedule that will be being posted soon as well. But thank you all for joining us today. Hope to see you all again very soon. And if you do have any staff members or coworkers that would like to learn this information, or if you would like for them to learn this information, please feel free to send them our way. These are all free, and we do encourage everybody to join us as often as they like. So thank you again for joining us today, and hope you all have a great afternoon. See you next time.